Okay, well, here we are. It's our final week in the book of Acts, Acts 28, which doesn't seem like the end. I mean, it seems like we need more. We need more from
Yep,
Luke. We're like, Luke, you stopped too soon. There's more that we need to know.
exactly.
But it's what we've got to work with. So we'll go with it. For me, it just drives me to read the letters, Paul's letters and see how the pieces all fit together. Um, so, all right, maybe that's just me. So, all right, so Acts 28. So when we leave 27, they have crashed into the island that we don't know. We don't know what they're going to find. Verse 1 says that now they've landed on the island and they've reached safety, and they learn that it's called Malta. And Malta is an island in the Mediterranean just south of Italy. So again, just think about the providence of God in the midst of that, in the midst of the 14 days without navigation tools. And now they land basically, by boat, a couple hundred miles from Rome. I mean, it's just phenomenal. So the natives who see this ragtag group of people coming out of the sea, cold and wet from a shipwreck, extend them unusual kindness. And remember, it has begun to rain and it was cold. Remember, it's November probably at this point. And so they kindle a fire and everybody comes around it. And Paul, ever being the servant, goes and gathers a bundle of brushwood and puts it on the fire, and a snake shows up. Wouldn't you know?
Of
You do a
course.
good deed and, you get bitten by a snake. Um, so it latches onto his hand. And when the natives see that the creature is hanging from his hand, they say to one another, "This man must be a murderer. Though he has escaped from the sea, justice has not allowed him to live." If you have a different translation than the NRSV, like if you have the NIV, or if any of your group members have the NIV, justice is capitalized in that version, and in other versions other than the NRSV, because it's a reference to the idea of some sort of perhaps deity of justice, or the person of justice.
Yeah, I
Um,
think her name is Diki or something. Diki,
yeah, something like that.
Dikee.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, Daiki, I think. Anyway,
Oh,
um,
Dike.
something like that. I don't know. But the idea that um, um, it's sort of um, uh, the sense that wrongs are balanced by rights and things back and forth. So because he escaped from death in the sea, then now he's going to die by the snake. Um, and so Paul just flings the snake off into the fire, suffered no harm, and they're watching him. They're like, you could just see them kind of sitting there going, okay, when's he going to puff up like a blueberry kind of thing, and die. Um, After they'd waited a long time, nothing unusual happened to him, and they changed their mind and they thought, oh, well, he must be a deity himself. Now, if you remember way back in chapter 14 in Lystra, the mirror image of this sort of event happened. So in Lystra, Paul goes in, and Paul and Barnabas at the time, uh, they go and they heal somebody. And at that very moment, then um, they think that Paul is Hermes, and Barnabas is Zeus. And so they want to offer sacrifices. And so the priest of Zeus comes in, so this whole big parade and everything. And he stops them and he says, no, 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 I'm just a man just like you. So it's sort of it's the mirror of this. So first, they think he's, uh, a regular person who's now supposed to be dead. And at the end of the story, they think he's a god. In Lystra, they think he's a god first, and then he has to come back and correct and say, no, I'm just a regular person. So it's sort of a mirror. Um, story around there. So after that, then we go to Monday the 26th, and we meet a guy by the name of Publius. And Publius is the leading man of the island, and he has some land that belongs to him, and he invites the people to come and be entertained hospitably for 3 days. And while he's there, we discover that the father of Publius is sick in bed with fever and dysentery. Paul visits him and cured him by praying and putting his hands on him. And wouldn't you know it, all the people of the land hear about it, and they come with all the folks who need to be cured from diseases, and says they were cured, that they came, and many who had diseases were cured. And they bestowed many honors on us. And when we were about to set sail, they put on board all the provisions we needed. So, so Publius, this, leading man of the island, has some land, brings the 276 people over, and they they're there for 3 days. And then all of a sudden, as Paul heals Publius's father, then it's all of a sudden all these other people come out of the woodworks from the far reaches of the island, I would imagine, and they are looking for being cured as well. And it's sort of, verse 10 seems to be a little bit out of order with verse 11, because it's like 3 months later. Verse 11 says 3 months later we set sail on a ship that had wintered at the island, but verse 10 says, okay, when they bestowed many honors on us, and when we were about to set sail, they put on board all the provisions we needed. Seems like the time should pass before they start putting stuff on the boat, but that's okay. So they get on an Alexandrian ship that had wintered at the island. So again, the idea that you traveling in the winter time, so sometime between October and March, are just not good ideas. Not a good time to be on the open sea in the Mediterranean. Is at play here again. But it's an Alexandrian ship. It's the same kind of ship. It would be loaded down with grain, bound for Italy, that had crashed into the island of Malta, that Paul and his compatriots were on. Luke goes as far to tell us that the twin brothers are the figurehead on this particular ship. Those twin brothers are Castor and Pollux. Some translations actually just put Castor and Pollux in there. But they were 2 sons of Zeus and Leda. They were regarded as guardian Greek deities for sailors. They were supposed to provide the ships with safety and protection against shipwrecks, which, if the twins were the figurehead of the previous Alexandrian ship, would be incredibly ironic. Don't you think? Anyway,
yes,
because that's exactly what befell that particular ship. Anyway, but it might cause us to wonder about the effectiveness of the Greek deities in the face of the promise of God that Paul proclaims on that ship. But since we don't know if they had the figureheads on there, that's just mere speculation, but it's kind of fun to think about. All right. And the Castor and Pollux are also associated with the Gemini zodiac sign, the twin sign there. All right. So verse 12, we put in at Syracuse, which is on the island of Sicily, stayed there for 3 days. Then they weighed anchor and came to Rhegium, which is on the very tiptoe of the boot of Italy. One day there, the south wind sprang up, and 2 days later, they end up in Puteoli. That's how you pronounce that, which is about halfway to Rome from there. It's on the western coast of Italy. And there they found believers who were invited to stay, and they were invited to stay with them for 7 days. And most likely they stayed there for a week at Julius's direction, or leniency, I suppose, because they were going to walk the rest of the way. They were off the ship, and so they are resting up for the overland journey at that point. And so we came to Rome. The believers from there, from Rome, when they heard of us, they came as far as the Forum of Appius and 3 taverns to meet us. And on seeing them, Paul thanked God and took good courage. So these believers in Rome hear from the believers in Puteoli that Paul and company have arrived. And so they begin to meet, in the middle somewhere. And when Paul sees them, he's encouraged. He's thankful to God for that. And then verse 16 tells us that when he came to Rome, or when we came to Rome, Paul was allowed to live by himself with the soldier who was guarding him. So he's under house arrest, and so there wouldn't be one particular soldier. There would be a rotation of soldiers, and probably every 12 hours or so, or every 6 hours, however they work that out. But he would never really be alone. He would never have, the freedom to just roam wherever he wanted to. He lived by himself in that, he wasn't in a jail. He was under house arrest. And he only takes 3 days before he starts meeting with people. He calls together the local leaders of the Jews. So these are the Jews in Rome. And when they assembled together, he says, brothers, though I had done nothing against our people or the customs of our ancestors, yet I was arrested in Jerusalem and handed over to the Romans, arrested by the Jews. When they had examined me, the Romans wanted to release me because there was no reason for the death penalty in my case. But when the Jews objected, I was compelled to appeal to the emperor, even though I had no charge to bring against my nation. So he's making his case for his innocence. He's telling them why he's in Rome, and he's telling them that if it were up to the Romans, they'd have let him go. But the Jews didn't want him to be released. They didn't want him to be dismissed and sent back out into the public because they didn't like what he was doing. So he says, for this reason, I have asked to speak to you, see you and speak with you, since it is for the sake of the hope of Israel that I am bound with this chain. So he comes back again to the resurrection. Comes back to the fact that it's the resurrection that caused so much strife among the Jews and he. And that's why they insisted that he stay in chains. And he's willing to be bound by chains so that he can come and defend himself. And so he was forced to appeal to the emperor, and now he's here. They replied, we have received no letters from Judea about you, and none of the brothers coming here has reported or spoken anything evil about you. Isn't that interesting? Isn't that interesting? I know. Why would this group of Jews who were so adamant about Paul being, causing, riots and stirring up insurrection and causing dissension among the Jews and talking about this resurrection thing and this Jesus person, why would they not send letters to the Jews in Rome when they knew that that's where he was going? I just don't understand. I mean, it seems like, it's like you sort of pack the court kind of deal. You send all of the evidence that you have, and and all the maybe that lawyer that they had back in 25, or he could that shyster that they could come up, he could come up with something fancy to tell them, so that when Paul arrives on the scene, they'll already have both barrels loaded and ready to go. But they don't. But what they do have is, it says, verse 22, we would like to hear from you what you think, for with regard to this sect, so about these Jesus people, we know that everywhere it is spoken against. So they have heard negative things about this, these Jesus followers, but not about Paul specifically, which is interesting. because he's he's been the main mouthpiece that we've heard and seen for the Jesus movement over the last 6 or 7 or 8 years that Acts sort of chronicles. So it's interesting that they haven't heard anything about Paul specifically, but they heard a lot of negative things about the Jesus people in particular. So they set a day, and they came to him in great numbers in his lodgings. From morning until evening, he explained the matter to them, testifying to the kingdom of God and trying to convince them about Jesus from both the law of Moses and from the prophets. So we see Paul's pattern here again. Jew first, then the Gentiles. He argues from the Torah. He argues from the prophets. He can talk about David, and he could talk about Solomon, and he can talk about Moses, and he can talk about Isaiah and Jeremiah, and he could talk about all of those things from the Jewish history and the exile, all that kind of stuff. He could talk about all of that because they're well versed in that. And he does, and he gets to the end, and he says, he's trying to convince them about Jesus. He's trying to tell them that Jesus is the fulfillment of all of the things, all of the hope of Israel. And he says in verse 24, Luke tells us that some were convinced, while others refused to believe. And so they disagreed with each other. Notice now they don't disagree with Paul. They don't get angry at Paul. They disagree with each other. It's kind of like the Sanhedrin, when Paul tosses that resurrection thing in the middle, they go at each other about it, not at Paul. So then, and as they were leaving, so they're like disagreeing with each other, and they're sort of like rah, 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 as they walk out of the house. He sort of has one more thing to say to them, and he says, "The Holy Spirit was right in saying to your ancestors through the prophet Isaiah." And then he quotes Isaiah 6, 9 and 10. "Go to this people and say, you will indeed listen, but never understand, and you will indeed look, but never perceive. For this people's heart has grown dull, and their ears are hard of hearing, and they have shut their eyes, so they might not look with their eyes, and listen with their ears, and understand with their heart, and turn, and I would heal them." He says, "Let it be known to you then that this salvation of God, this resurrection, this fulfillment of the messianic prophecies has been sent to the Gentiles, and they will listen." Their ears are open, their heart is open, and they will accept it. And when he had said this, the Jews departed, arguing vigorously among themselves. Again, they're not arguing with Paul, they're arguing among themselves about what do we do about this resurrection thing. So let's see. Yeah. Very good. And then the last two verses, 30 and 31. He lived there 2 whole years at his own expense and welcomed all who came to him, proclaiming the kingdom of God and teaching about the Lord Jesus Christ with all boldness and without hindrance. So Paul is under house arrest for 2 years in Rome, and has people visiting him all the time. So in addition to the guards that are on the rotation with him, people come in and out. My guess is that there will be just as many Jews as Gentiles that come in and out of his home. And every single time he's proclaiming the kingdom of God and teaching about Jesus. And he does so with boldness, with all boldness, and without hindrance. Like there's nothing stopping him. He's freely proclaiming this. There's no mention of like the guards being like, you can't talk about that Jesus guy again. I would just, back on 16, on verse 16, what conversations do you think Paul and the guard would have had? I would think that by the time those 2 years were over, every single one of those guards would be so familiar with Jesus, they're probably already Christians. But, I don't know. That might not have gone well with Caesar. So. Anyway, so that's the end of the book of Acts. we want there to be this dramatic scene where Paul and Nero face off, and Paul has the chance to try to convince him of Jesus and all this kind of stuff. But Luke doesn't give us that. And different commentators have different theories on why that is, and we can chat about those if you wish. But I think I just think I have a particular take on it, and I talk about this in my message, and you can kind of see the hint for Sunday's message is there. The title of my message is sort of the hint. It's sort of the hint. It sort of gives my hand away, so to speak, as far as where I am on that. But so very good. So what question?
I liked NT's on page 249, and that it's kind of telling, like you tag your it. Not the end. It's our beginning.
Mm-hmm.
Where we're to take off running, and as Paul has been doing.
Right. Yes. Yeah, I pretty much let's see. Yeah, pretty much that whole page of 249 I underlined. But it says Lucas brought them all. So like men, women, children, rulers, disabled people, local authorities, artisan governors, wandering tent makers, philosophers, young men nodding off on windowsills.
Yeah.
Luke's brought them all before us in a dazzling display, both of writing and of theology, drawing us in, reminding us once more that this is a drama in which we ourselves have been called to belong to the cast. That's the thing, right there. It's that we have been called. So, I mean, and that's where I went with the whole tag your it deal. It's our turn. So the journey is ours. The trials and vindications are ours. The sovereign presence of Jesus is ours. The story is ours to pick up and carry on. So it's our turn. So there you go. Tip my hat there. All right. So what questions do y'all have?
I've enjoyed 27 and 28 so much.
Oh yeah.
I'm okay, unless Gary's got something earth-shattering.
Not I.
One of the, I'll throw this out while y'all are looking. One of the commentators I read, I can't remember if it was N.T. Wright or if it was Tony Merida, said that they felt like 27 was the climax of Acts. And so that sort of puts, and I couldn't then categorize 28. Does that make it the denouement, or does it make it, the epilogue kind of thing? But that this dramatic boat scene is the climax of the book. It's like, oh, okay. Because I really do think that, if somebody's reading the book of Acts for the very first time, and all along, for the last 10 chapters, it's been like, I'm going to Rome, I'm going to Rome, I'm going to Rome, I'm going to be in front of the emperor. And then there's no emperor scene. It's like, it's like, wait, I can't remember. I guess there's, this idea that like, it's like, hey, you forgot to publish the last chapter kind of thing, I'm missing some pages kind of thing. So I don't know. I mean, obviously 27 is a very climactic moment, that whole scene, and it's deeply ingrained, deeply evocative of the hope that Paul has in the midst of trials that he's endured, and we'll talk about in his letters.
Okay,
go ahead.
What provisions were you looking for on Monday's second question?
Yeah, I think they're gonna, even though they're going on a grain ship, I'm thinking that there's gonna be food and water and clothes and probably there may be some money involved. I don't know if molten money is good in Rome, or if molten money is different than Roman coins. So it's most likely part of the Roman Empire. So they may use the same coinage. I don't know. I didn't dig that far into it, but I would say just basic provisions. Probably nothing outlandish.
Friday the 30th.
Huh?
Both those questions, it feels like they could have the same answer. Unless I'm missing something.
So, so for the first one, there's a mixed response. I think that's the mixed response is what happens when Paul preaches to Jews. Is every time he's done it, there's always been some that believe, some that just reject him outright. Every once in a while, we get some that go, let me consider that. But most of the time, it's either, yeah, I get it. You connected all the dots for me. Thank you. Got it. Love Jesus. And then there's others that are like, you're nuts. And they dismiss him out of hand. But the Jews keep arguing among themselves because more than likely because of theological differences around the resurrection. Because that's his thing. He keeps coming back to the hope of Israel is resurrection, and that has been fulfilled in Jesus the Messiah. And when we saw it with the Sadducees and the Pharisees very viscerally, but even the regular Jews, we've talked about like Sadducees and Pharisees are sects of Judaism. Even the regular Jews probably had variances on like, okay, do I think about what do I think about resurrection here, or what do I and so I sort of equated it to churches today. I mean, we have different denominations for reasons that are many of them are theological, some of them are structural, but I won't go into all of that. But many of our churches today disagree with one another, even though they sort of they come around some basic tenets, but then you get beyond 2 or 3 or 4 things, and then all of a sudden they start to splinter apart from there. I mean, just say it.
Well, so in today's world, is there a sect within Israel that is like the Sadducees, and one that's like the Pharisees? Is that the difference in Orthodox and unorthodox, or yeah?
Right. So yes, there are different branches of Judaism. There's the Orthodox Jews that are very conservative. They stick very closely to the Torah, and those are the ones you're going to see with the ringlets.
Okay.
That's the do not cut your hair at the temples or whatever, and then there's Reformed Judaism, which is a little bit more liberal. So they're going to have female rabbis. Orthodox Jews won't have female rabbis. So they just differ on their interpretation of Torah.
Yeah.
So as far as I don't know exactly if you want to call those parallel of Pharisees and Sadducees, maybe, but again there are variants within. I believe there's like ultra Orthodox Jews that are like there's you do this because it says this, and you don't ask why kind of questions.
Still following the original laws.
Right. And then there's Orthodox, they're like, okay, yeah, it says this. And then there's like, you look at like the Talmud or something like that, and you look at the Midrash, and you can kind of see the interpretation, and you can make some allowances somewhere. And then there's probably folks in the middle, and then there's the Reformed, and then there's, you know, like Jewish in name only kind of folks too.
Just a comment on verse 5, which is April 24th. Shook off the creature into the fire. Mm-hmm. Some semblance there of Revelation.
Maybe.
Just a thought. Okay. Regarding the book, I asked our class, and nobody voiced any concerns. I will bring up one. If there's any way we can, or you can work this to where our weekly reading is about what we are going to do on that Sunday, mm-hmm. versus what happened to us this time, where we were reading sometimes up to Wednesday.
Yeah.
And then after that, we didn't read anything necessarily that's going to have anything to do with this Sunday. It's going to be the next time.
Okay.
So I don't know if that's got to be hard to put together. I'm not trying to diminish that at all. It's just, that's one of those things that confuses some people.
Right.
I had that same comment.
Yes, that will be that kind of formatting and that kind of division of readings and things like that will be a high priority for going forward. So
that means you'll have all your sermons written before you write the book, right?
Almost, yeah. I suppose so. Yikes. So the my hope is with so for Nehemiah starting in June, I'll format it a little differently. It'll look more like the study guides that you got for Advent, where there's a reading plan for the week leading up to the Sunday gathering or whatever day your gathering is. And then with a specific emphasis on the text that I'm going to preach on. And that will probably be included on the page for Sunday or whatever. I haven't totally formatted it yet, but with 13 chapters to get through in about 7 weeks, maybe 8, depending on construction timeline, it'll have to be about 2 chapters a week to get through all that. And I promise you, every bit of the book of Nehemiah is important for people to read. The reality is also that there are portions of it that can be summarized in about 2 minutes that don't need to be rehashed. So I will do some of the. It won't be like, if I'm preaching on 6 and 7, I'm just going to throw some numbers out there. I won't walk through all of that. I'll hit the highlights of it and then get to the point of the section that I'm going to talk about in my sermon. So, but the reading plan will cover everything. So yes, you'll have to read some long lists of names, and it'll be fun. And everybody will go, "How do you pronounce that?" And you go,
"It'll be fun."
You can. The answer is the best you can.
And you're still pushing for the 15 minutes, right? Start the day.
Yes. I'll go back to that again. Yeah, come back to that.
Did you ever discuss? What did you find out with Bobby on doing a communion?
So we're still working on that. Yeah, we are hopeful to. I know for sure we're gonna have 2 worship nights this summer. I think the first one is scheduled for the end of May, and then the other one is scheduled towards the end of June. We may have to adjust some dates based on availability of musicians. But when you get your May newsletter, you'll see some information about those fellowship nights that we'll do starting second week of May, and you know, we're doing four different kinds. There's a movie night, game night, mission night, and a worship night, and so we'll do each of those twice through May and into July, and but on those nights that we do worship, we will do communion. And then we are also looking at some Sunday morning options to do outside as we're getting closer. We just have to figure out how to make that work logistically. So it's at this point, it's not a matter of technology. It's a matter of, again, it's a matter of personnel to make it happen. We've got the technology piece figured out. We just have to get the personnel lined up, because it's odd now that, you know, we quote unquote have Sunday off because we, you know, like my Sunday was yesterday because I preached yesterday. Although I still run the chat stream at both services on Sunday morning now. Anybody looking to jump in on that fun thing? It's fun. It is actually fun to run the chat stream. But I'd be more than happy to pass that off to some other folks. So anyway.
Guess we can nominate people right here.
That's right. Yeah, that's right. I am the chair of nominations. Right? Anyway,
Oh, geez.
Anyway.
Oh, well, thanks, Gary.
Yeah, we'll just drop it right on them.
No, that's, you know, it's I think when we come back in the building, we will have there'll be new volunteer opportunities that are made available when we're back in the building because of our new setup with where the media booth will be, and our streaming setup. We'll have the opportunity to have somebody that's running the stream, but then we'll have an opportunity for somebody who's doing the chat, because I won't be able to do that anymore when we're back in person. But then we'll also probably need somebody to monitor like the prayer requests and things like that come in on the chat. So, and it needs to be somebody that, you know, is helpful or is willing to engage in that kind of conversation and prayer. So anyway, so some new volunteer opportunities.
Could I drop a hint just as a choir member? We've not heard anything from Casey. We stopped our months ago, you know, choir meeting on Zoom.
Oh yeah.
I know there's some of us that, like Don and I, that were this close to coming back to in service when the freeze hit. Mm-hmm. And we're sitting here going, you know, we'd love to come back and choir. They need a couple more on that back row of tenors and basses, but we haven't heard anything, and we sometimes get the feeling that all he wants there is the word he has. So might be something that he sends it out, you know, just an update, and if you're willing to come on back.
Okay. I know that towards the middle to late May, he's going to do another recording session for online worship. So hopefully he will reach out to those who are ready to come and be part of that. One of the logistics of that is it's not a giant space. So when, you know, like you saw for, you know, the current recordings plus, you know, like Holy Week and stuff like that, you know, putting 6 or 7 people in there, it gets a little squishy. Anyway, but, you know, as far as coming back we come back in the building, I think what he's planning on doing is, doing some ramp ups of, going back to having Sunday afternoon rehearsals and things like that with the choir and the bells, and getting things rolling that way so that once we hit the ground in person, then we're ready to go. So. Hello.
Sorry.
That's okay.
Checking on me.
Oh, good. Okay. What other questions do you have?
Are you ready to share what you're going to do in the fall?
Oh, no, I'm not. Sorry.
Got the end of July, and that's it.
That's right. I got to, and August will probably be a standalone kind of deal. From the first Sunday in August to probably Labor Day Sunday, will be a set of things on its own, and then after Labor Day we'll kick into the new deal. But no, I don't have anything to share with you for that point.
Okay.
Sorry.
It is what it is.
Oh, no. If you are looking for a resource for Nehemiah, this is from, so N.T. Wright wrote the New Testament for Everyone series. John Goldingay wrote the Old Testament for Everyone. So this is a companion Old Testament set. So it's Ezra, Nehemiah, and Esther. It's like $15 on Amazon if you want to get a hold of it. He's fairly accessible, and you can, and it's like the middle section. So Ezra, Nehemiah, and Esther all are right around the same time period. They're in that Persian time period. So he put them all together here in this volume. And it's, the whole thing is only 200 pages. And the section on Nehemiah is about 80 pages. Yeah, about 80 pages of it. So it's this middle section right here. So he's accessible just like N.T. Wright. He's the only drawback about the Old Testament for Everyone series is that there are some places where he just kind of skips over. I'm like, wait, what? Like N.T. Wright did the entire thing, and the entire New Testament. John Goldingay he kind of skips over some parts, which I don't like, but I have other resources that can fill in the gaps. So, but he does do the whole book of Nehemiah. So that's helpful. So that's one of the resources I'll use for that series. But you'll see when you look up Nehemiah, you often see that Ezra and Nehemiah go together, because Ezra and Nehemiah hung out together. They were buddies. So Ezra was the priest and Nehemiah was the leader of the people.
Better hurry, Amazon's only got 15 left in stock.
Oh, well, there's a giant run on them. Yeah, Sherry Files already emailed me and she said, is that Nehemiah series? Or she actually called it Jeremiah, and I politely corrected her. I said, did N.T. Wright write a book about that one? And I said, no, he's a New Testament guy. But I directed her to that one, that resource that I just showed you.
I can look this up, but did he do one on, did Goldingay do one on Genesis?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'd have to look and see. I have it.
Oh, you do?
It's in the boxes. I have all the volumes of the Old Testament and the New Testament series.
Oh, okay.
I got a good deal on christianbook.com. One day I was looking for it and I just got all the volumes. Some of that continuing ed money went to good work.
My class is really wanting to keep going with or restart. We call it resurrect Genesis.
Yeah.
Resurrecting Genesis.
Yes, I know that his commentary is 2 volumes on Genesis, so I'm guessing.
Oh my gosh!
But I mean, but they're both they're both like 200 pages. So,
and that's not unlike what we got here. 2 volumes of N.T. Wright, you know. So
yeah. So there you go. But yes, he does have a commentary on Genesis.
Okay. Is your thought when we go back to in person that we still will have those that will want to continue with Zoom?
As far as you guys go, or
well, you're gonna still put the sermon online, right? Stream it.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Yes.
What about you, Gary? What's your class? Are they all going to come back as soon as we come back, or are they still not sure? Oh, you're muted.
There's some of them that still aren't sure what they're going to do.
Yeah.
And there's some of them that may never come back at this point. Yeah. They're getting too old. Some of them have got illnesses they didn't have a year ago. So maybe tough for some of them.
I will tell you that when we come back in person, we will live stream what happens in the sanctuary, and that will happen, at the, correct time for worship. But the archive will become just the message. It won't be the whole service anymore.
Okay.
So we're going to try to incentivize coming in person or watching the live stream.
All. Yeah.
If you want to get it all, then you come either in person or you come live stream while it's happening. And then just simplify the archive to be just the message, which is actually what most churches do. We have the capacity right now because we're all online just to put the whole service up there. Then you can get the whole thing on demand. But when we come back in person, then we'll switch to just doing the sermon. All right. What else? Anything else about Acts? Anything else you want to ask about?
Enjoyed. Really enjoyed.
Yep. I have a question that has nothing to do with any of this. It has to do with Zoom capability.
Okay.
You have shown, well, in the past, you've shown screens that aren't just us. You showed maps last week.
Mm-hmm.
How do you do that? Is there an easy way to explain it, or do I need to go find a book?
Or can we have a Zoom 101 class?
A Zoom tutorial?
Yeah. Maybe not today, since you're probably running out of time. But
yeah, I agree. That would be awesome.
Sure. No, I'm happy to do that. I mean, I've gotten fairly familiar with Zoom in the last year, so I can do just about anything. The easiest thing to do is if you take your mouse and you shake it around, you should see the menu bar at the bottom of your screen.
Right.
And right in the middle will be a share screen option. If you click on that, then what happens is then you see a pop-up window that has all of your available options. So like on mine, I see desktop, I see whiteboard, iPhone, because my phone's plugged in right now. I see my browser, I see my calendar. And so what I can do, you pick the one that you want. So if I want to share, here, I'll just share my Google Chrome. You click on it, and then in the bottom right-hand corner, there's a button that says share. And so when you do that, now you see my Google Chrome, and you see the tabs that I have open. And if you have multiple,
you have to be the leader to be able to do that?
You do not. You can, when you set up the Zoom, you can, as the leader, you can, or as the one who's setting it up, the host, you can allow other people to share their screens. You can also not allow them to share their screens. And you can toggle it on and off as you need to. So like I have a group of guys that I get together with, and the guy who set it up so that only he can share the screen. And then every once in a while, it's like, I want to share my screen, or one of the other guys wants to, and he's got to go in and click it off, and so that it works correctly. So, but then once you're sharing your screen, then I see this, it says, I think it says you're seeing Dean Libby's screen.
Yeah.
At the top. But then there's a button that says stop share on my screen, and I click that, and then it pops back to the regular view that I have. So I can, I'm happy to walk you through all of that, and you can go to zoom.us, their website, and they have tutorials to walk you through all that kind of stuff too, but I'm happy to do that as well. Because, there's some specific things that are very helpful on here that I've utilized. Like I haven't utilized the polling feature in a while. Like I did that during the Psalm 23 study a few times. But then there's, the recording section, there's the chat window. There's, how you can manage participants, that's specifically for the host. But the different views and things, it's a very powerful tool, and I have enjoyed being able to utilize it. It's been worth the church pays for 3 licenses, so, and we've been able to share it. So Sandy uses our license. We just swap her from a basic user to a licensed user when she needs it, and others jump in. So we've taught, like Brian Beamer's taught confirmation on Zoom this year, and Bobby's done youth Bible study on Zoom, and UMW uses it, and Friday morning ladies do, and we host other meetings with it.
Okay.
And we figured out that 3 was sort of the magic number for us as far as licenses, because we never really had a need for more than, because when you have whatever the license is, you can host a meeting for however long you want. And we never had a time where we had more than, 3 people that needed to meet in a relatively short period of time, that they would have overlapped. So that was our magic number.
Well, and 3 is magic number all through the Bible. Anyway.
It is, right? Yeah. Right. There's a Schoolhouse Rock song about that, right? Hey. Very good.
All righty.
Yeah. So we'll take a break from here. We'll be back on the final Wednesday of May to kick off the Nehemiah series, because I'll be on vacation the first 2 Wednesdays of June. So the first one will be live, and the next 2 will be pre-recorded. So if you read through, so the first 3 weeks will go chapters 1, 2, 3. It'll be through chapter 5. So if you have questions for chapters 3, 4, and 5, I'll give you an opportunity to ask those, and I can address those in those videos.
Okay.
And, because I'm going to take vacation, and I'm not going to answer email, and I'm not going to, I know it's going to be a real vacation.
Yes.
Be a real vacation.
Wonderful.
Yes. And I'm so looking forward to it. So anyway, but yeah, I'll be gone first 10 days or so of June.
Okie doke.
But because we're because we're all online, I'll record my sermons before I leave, and you'll never know.
Except when we call him and nobody answers.
That's right. Nobody answers. Like, I'm sorry.
The person to who you are talking is not here.
That's right. He will get back to you in 32 hours.
Yeah.
Your hold time is 14 days.
Yeah.
Right. So very good. All right. Well, I appreciate y'all very much. And I've appreciated your dedication to be here on Wednesdays and to lead your classes. And I pray God blesses your time in May as you pick up that mantle for a brief time. And then we'll be back together for June and July. And then by that point, I will know what August looks like. And,
yeah, sure.
Yeah. So,
okay.
Y'all have a great rest of your day.
You too. Bye-bye.
Thanks again. Bye.
No problem.